Welcome to TrulyFit.
All right, back. Thanks for joining the TrulyFit Podcast. As usual, we're going to run down our trending health and fitness and nutrition related topics. For any new listeners or people who just have not heard you before or forgot, give us a quick rundown of your credentials, who you are, and what you do day to day.
Sure. Yeah. Apologies in advance. I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is a little scratchy. I am a licensed dietitian, a board certified licensed dietitian. I have my own private practice here in Miami Beach, and I focus primarily on weight loss and metabolic issues.
And again, for any new listeners here, on Thursdays, I do solo episodes where I talk about something that is trending in the fitness or health industry that I want to elaborate on, or that I talked about with a previous guest, maybe my sister, and I think it's important to maybe unpack it further. And then on Mondays, I'd either do an interview episode, which I've been doing less and less. I do have a few coming up. Or my sister Rebecca comes on and we talk about all these trending things going on in the health and fitness that we think are vital, whether they're trending on TikTok or trending in the news, or we think there are going to be trends that come about and we want to get ahead of it. So today, the election had just happened a few days ago here. And without getting too far into politics, one of the changes that may happen is the MAHA movement, which is Make America Healthy Again. RFK, who was running for president at first under the Democratic name, actually then sort of switched to independent and then dropped out of the race, and then he supported Trump. Long story short is he has this Make America Healthy movement and he backed Trump, so Trump may put him in some sort of position that gives him the power to make some moves. For those of you who don't know who RFK is, he was a lawyer who had a lot of famous cases. He sued Monsanto like a bunch of times. In New York, like a bunch of the waterways were, there's like, I don't know, it was like coal plants or something in West Virginia and Ohio. He had like $700 million settlements for, again, just basically the toxic water from environmental issues, right? So he's essentially an environmental lawyer, and he's learned a lot about the environment and health through that, guys. Now there's a lot of like vax stuff that he also believes in, and we're not going to get into that today. We're going to stay on the Make America Healthy movement. So I'm going to throw it to you first. If you got put into his position, right? If you got put into some sort of like minister of health, and you could make the first two moves in the 100 days, that's when everything happens. What would be your big two moves that you would make to help make America healthy again?
I love this question. So first, I want to say that I wish we could separate politics from health and nutrition and science, but it feels like we can't. I don't feel like this needs to be a right or left thing. It's, everyone wants to have optimal health. So if you, disagree with RFK politically, put that aside, because we need someone just sort of spearheading some of this thing. So anyway, if I were in his position, the first thing I would do, the easiest thing we can do is we can align our food regulations with the EU. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can take a look at these artificial dyes, artificial flavors, even some of these natural flavors, some of these preservatives, and colorings that are in our foods that we don't need, that the EU has banned for many, many years. So it's not like we need to go in and do the research. No, let's just copy what they do, right? Let's trust their research. And let's also demand that these companies, right? Like, let's talk about General Mills. If you were to buy, I know your favorite cereal growing up, Steve, was Cinnamon Toast Crunch, right? So if you're to buy Cinnamon Toast Crunch here and Cinnamon Toast Crunch in Spain, it has different ingredients, and that's not fair, right? And different ingredients, being the ones used here in America, are cheaper and are less healthy, and some of them are even banned in Europe. So it's not that big of a stretch to ask these companies to provide us with the same food, the same ingredients that they're already doing in all of these countries across the world. The other thing, so that's what I think we need to do as far as demanding from some of these large food conglomerates. Then I think we need to take a look at agriculture, and we need to immediately stop subsidizing crops like corn, soy, sugar, and wheat. Because those crops are subsidized, farmers grow them, and that's why they're so abundant in our food supply, and they're not healthy. So we need to subsidize organic foods, organic produce. We need to make it easier for farms to get organic certifications, because it's actually very hard and very expensive to do that, even if farmers are, practicing in organic ways. And then we need to outlaw really dangerous pesticides like glyphosate, and make sure we're not putting something else in its place that's just as harmful.
Yeah, I really like that response because it's so easy, as you said, especially part one there. We're not, you're not reinventing the wheel. Oh, yeah, and that's actually, again, not to get political, but that is some of Trump's pitch, sort of internationally speaking, is that when you work with other countries, import export things, like rules have to be even, right? So you talk about tariffs, like if we're being tariffed, then the tariffs have to go the other way, right? If we're paying a certain amount of money into NATO, then other countries need to pay that money into NATO. So it's like if we're demanding this, from other countries, if they're demanding this, then why can't that cross over? That seems like a really easy fix, right? Take those ingredients out. Now, concerning the agriculture, I think that's great too, because that goes to something that I'm big on, which is just incentives. That's humans. We're not going to change how humans work, right? It's something we all try to do, unfortunately, and this speaks to politics and health and fitness. Is that we try to change human nature? You want to work with human nature, and incentives do that. So sort of piggyback off of what you would do, I would say I would have a big incentive structure that favored health foods. And to me, it's actually the weirdest term when someone says health food. What do you mean health food? So you're eating not health? Like, shouldn't all food be healthy? What do you mean? Like, I'll go to the store. I'm going to get some health food today. It's like, oh, so all the food you've been eating is killing you? Like, shouldn't you at some point merge those two? All your food should be healthy. But, nevertheless here, health foods, we should have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 criteria. And if you meet that criteria, you circumvent a certain level of taxation or some extra penalty, whatever you want to call it, right? A fee, a charge. So therefore, if you have Chips Ahoy cookies, you're getting there's an upcharge there, okay? And if you have whatever it is, organic broccoli, you circumvent that upcharge. You don't have to pay that, right? So that starts to, even if it doesn't fully go one way or the other, it starts to level out prices where we don't have the price problem, which is another incentive issue. If somebody doesn't make a lot of money, if they make $40,000 a year and they have 5 kids, even if they're on these WIC programs, they're going to be buying the cheaper food, and the cheaper food happens to be bad for you. So we have to change the price incentive structure. You're talking about changing it from the agricultural level. I think that's great, but I think we should also change it from the supermarket level.
Yeah. Can I give a third? Can we talk about one more?
Sure. And I'll give my second after you, but give your third first.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought.
No, you're fine.
The third. Well, no. You give your second, and then I'll give my third.
So my second it has to do with health and fitness as opposed to food, right? Because Make America Healthy Again needs to come from both fronts, as we talk about a lot in this podcast. It's not just what you eat; it's obviously how you move. It's not just how you move; it's what you eat. And we've just like abandoned PE in this country, and we've gotten a little soft. I think we need to have more PE to the point of public schools. I would say every morning, and this goes to also the maybe over-medicated side of this, meaning so many people are over-medicated at a young age, especially young boys. And one of the reasons they're over-medicated is because they have so much energy to expend. So what if every morning in public schools, there was some sort of physical activity that you had to meet, right? Maybe on Mondays it's yoga, Tuesdays it's a sport, Wednesdays it's meditation, Thursdays it's another sport, right? But it's something where these kids can go in, they can get some of the energy out of them in the morning and then go to class. Not only does it keep you moving, but it might keep you more attentive and focused during your classes, so we don't have to keep pumping these kids full of what are essentially, uppers all day long.
100%. I love that. And ideally after breakfast, and a lot of kids eat breakfast in school, right? We never did, but a lot of schools have that program where you're eating breakfast in school. There should be immediate physical activity afterwards, right? Let's get some of that energy out. Let's bring your blood sugar down. There's been so many studies that talk about the benefits of even going for a walk and how that changes, some of the synapses in your brain and how you can think better and how you perform better on exams. We need to get up and get moving. I totally agree with that.
And then what was your potential third, or one that you would sub in for another one of these?
My third one, and I'm curious to hear your feedback on this because of what your wife does for a living, but I really think we need to go into, the healthcare system at large and look at some of these hospital systems and incentivize doctors to keep patients healthy, right? Right now, doctors and surgeons are incentivized to give medication and perform procedures, when what we really need is like to incentivize them for not doing a surgery, right? For someone coming in and not needing metformin. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, they have those, but they're not great. So the ones they have, let's say for like general practitioners, are like smoking cessation things, right? So it's like, oh, if you talk to your patient about smoking, or if you get your patient to stop smoking, then maybe we could talk about some RVU benefits that you get from this. But they're not great. They need more of them. The problem is that doesn't align with the current healthcare model. So you'd have to change the whole model, meaning if the model is based off of seeing as many patients as you can in a day, then you can't do that sort of in-depth overview of your patient. So the whole model itself would have to change, not just the few incentive structures around it, which we've talked about, many of times on this podcast. It's a bad model. The healthcare model sucks, but there's nothing we can really do about it.
Yeah, you're right. And, that's why I, as a practitioner, I don't take insurance. Like I'm signed up to, but I choose not to, because the amount that I get reimbursed for insurance, it's like 20 minutes with a patient. And that doesn't even get me through the intake form. So obviously there's a lot of changes that need to be made, but I'm excited to see where this goes.
Me too. And time will tell. Hopefully it's something that is done within the first 100 days, and that it really does matter to the administration, and it's not just all talk, but we will see. Moving on here to the next topic. Next topic here is why the NIL. For people who don't know what that is, it's basically now they are paying college athletes, and this really pertains more to football players, but of course all college athletes, and why the NIL is actually going to help our industry being the fitness and health industry. And I'm going to sort of unpack this, and you can tell me what you think about this. Well, first off, the NIL, no one knows if it's going to be good or bad. People had a lot of thoughts about this in the first place. Should you be paying athletes, college athletes? The whole purpose of being a collegiate athlete is that you're not a professional. And what differentiates you is that professionals get paid. So now if you're getting paid, are you considered a professional athlete? And are you actually going to go to class at all? If you're a 5-star recruit who knows that you're going to go to the NFL and you're going to get drafted after 2 years, so you can basically just get a bunch of C's in all your class and not do anything. Where does the student athlete come into this equation? That's a different part of the conversation. We could talk about that, but I'm not going to talk about that, right? What I want to talk about is how it's going to help our industry. And now you not only get, let's go ahead and say it's cost $50,000 a year to go to, Syracuse. And now that player, let's say he's the number one basketball recruit in the country, in addition to that, is going to sign an NIL deal worth $850,000 for his freshman year. Wow. Not only is he saving $50,000, him and his family, but he's going to be making $850,000. So this now will have high school athletes, in my opinion, working even harder and spending more money. They already started to really spend money working with personal trainers, working with nutritionists, working with sports specialists, to get to that next level, because of the fact you're going to be making money so much earlier. It used to be that your goal was to get scholarship. And that's pretty much it, because there's only a small percentage, maybe 1% of people who get drafted, let's say, from college to the NFL. You're never really going to make the money. You're there to be, just simply a college athlete, but you're there also to learn and graduate. Well, unfortunate or fortunate, that structure has now changed because of the money that's involved, and there will be more money flowing through. And I think that's going to help out our industry as a whole.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you a quick question. You said $850,000. Is that an accurate amount of money, or did you just sort of make that up? Like, is that what they're actually considering paying these athletes?
So there is no one standard fee. It's very interesting. It's a complete wild, wild west. It's so new. And the schools themselves aren't necessarily paying the athletes. They're sort of like trusts that you donate to, that alumni are donating to, and that local businesses and things that are donating to, and they're kind of paid out of a larger trust. So yeah, I mean, there's some athletes making millions of dollars probably, right? But they might have to sign some sort of contract to do things to get that, right? They might have to be on a commercial for one of the, whatever the car salesman, the local Toyota says, I'll pay you $1 million, but you got to do 6 commercials for me in addition to this too, right? So Yeah, it's a little bit of a wild, wild west. Now, I will tell you this a little bit off topic, so I'll try and you don't have to answer this, and I'll try not to go too far down this rabbit hole. But it's actually an advantage so far in the first year or two that we've seen this for college sports as far as leveling the playing field, because you used to just have 5 or 6 teams that were getting all of the 5-star athletes. It's really hard to compete at the top levels of college football, right? You can win 8 or 9 games and lose 4, and maybe you're here and there, but like the teams who go undefeated and win the national championship, there was like 6 or 7 different teams over the course of 20 years, no one else. And it's because they were stacking 5-star athletes. People would get hurt, which is normal, and you have this attrition, and they had another 5 or 4-star player right underneath them. Now you have these other 4 or 5-star players that go, you know what? I can go to Vanderbilt and get $1 million and start right away. Why would I go to Alabama, maybe make less because they have so many other players they're paying, and I'm not going to play. So It's leveling the playing field out a little bit more too.
Listen, I fully support it. I think colleges are making money off athletes, right? They make money off ticket sales. They make money off, concession stands in the arena. There's jerseys, there's things. So why aren't the athletes being compensated? I can't imagine how difficult it is to be a collegiate athlete, right? Like at that level, because you are practicing probably, similar amount to professionals, and then you still have to go to class. So I 100% think they should be compensated. And I don't think that will take away from them graduating, getting a degree, because I think right? So say you're someone who's sort of in the middle, you're making some money, but like, hey, I'm not going to be able to walk on to the 49ers. Okay, well, then at least you can make money now, and then maybe invest some of that and choose what you want to do. But yeah, if anyone should be making money off college athletes, it's the college athletes, right, that are doing the work and putting the time in. So I think it's great. I think it'll definitely incentivize teenagers to take it more seriously. And it's not quite the same camp, but adolescent obesity is on the rise. Overweight and obesity is on the rise. So if we can incentivize kids that they can make that sort of money at an earlier age if they do pursue athletics, I think that's a great thing.
Which will help our industry, because you have to think that more people are going to be trying to get there. More parents are willing to spend the money. And that's going to help us as people in the fitness and health industry, especially people who start to specialize, right? I train basketball athletes. I train football athletes. I work with people who are, trying to increase their vertical leap in my industry. And then also in your industry, people maybe who are nutritionists who focus on like muscle building or something, right? So like there's going to be an uptick, I think, in our communities. All ships rise with the rising tide sort of deal. So I do think that's good. And yeah, like you said, they're making billions of dollars off of these kids. It makes sense that they're being paid. I don't know how it's going to work out. They were always being paid anyway. It was just swept under the table. There's been movies made about this in the 80s and 90s, right? You'll see some kid from rural Arkansas he lives with his grandmother who lives in a shack down by the sea. It's 300 square feet and it's a disaster. And that suddenly he shows up to school and he's got an Escalade and the whole interior is decked out with Louis Vuitton and he's got 24-inch rims on it. You're like, well, how did that happen? So there was always money being passed around behind the scenes to these athletes, and rightfully so. But it was people were getting in trouble for it. Famous cases, Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and some of these guys at USC. Reggie Bush got his Heisman taken away because they found out about it. The problem was the coaches would never get in trouble because they would jump ship. The programs would get in trouble. So if I'm USC and I'm the coach, I'm Pete Carroll, and we do something illegal, guess what? I'm so good, I quit. I go to the NFL, I go to a different team, and I don't get charged. USC as a team gets charged. They get the fine, which is typically like you lose 5 scholarships and you can't play in a bowl game for 5 years. But the coaches weren't getting penalized. So
that's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Because you can't penalize the individual person. You have to you have to penalize the organization, but they don't care because they just jump ship and go somewhere else. So it was really sort of a kangaroo court type system, and it wasn't working. So I'm glad that these college athletes are being paid. It'll have to be restructured down the road. But again, going back to us, all boats rise with the rising tide. So it's going to help us in the health and fitness industry as well. Gut health. We've talked about it a bunch I've done whole podcasts on it. I've had people with their PhDs who own these companies, pre and probiotics, come on here. It's all interesting, but I got to be honest with you, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the gut health. I'm sick of the gut health because it's talked about on all levels, right? We have the PhDs talking about it, and we have like just like the bro who is chugging apple cider vinegar talking about it, and it seems to be this never-ending thing because the science is always changing. Can we just like not talk about it for a few years? Can we just wait 5 years and do more research and then bring it back up? Can we stop talking about gut health?
No, we can't stop talking about gut health. I'm sorry. So our gut health really is the center of our health. For so many reasons, right? Leaky gut is one of the primary drivers of inflammation. And that's when you have basically gaps in between the cells in your intestinal wall. Food can get in, which, or other particles can get in, which causes inflammation in our body. The other issue is the majority of our neurotransmitters are made in our gut. And you need amino acids to build them up, right? So when we talk about this mental health crisis in adolescents and adults that we're looking at, so many people are on some type of antidepressant, anti-anxiety, ADHD, right? All of these different types of medications. And there's a whole field now called nutritional psychiatry, where if you're eating the right foods, it can actually help manage and alleviate a lot of these symptoms and a lot of these conditions. And so your neurotransmitters are made in your gut. So if your gut health isn't optimal, you're not going to be able to make the neurotransmitters you need to function appropriately. And then, the last thing I'll say here is, your gut and brain are directly connected, right? Directly connected in a number of ways, but primarily through the vagus nerve. And we know this because when you are excited about something, right? When your brain is excited about something, you feel butterflies in your gut, right? So there's like clear evidence of that, like direct connection that everyone has felt before. And what they're finding now is that certain organisms in our gut are being found in our brain. When they do these postmortem autopsies of people with neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and some of these ones that we don't even have names for yet,
Sure.
They're finding different types of organisms that should be in our gut have traveled and are in our brains. And so I really think, like you said, there's going to be more research. It's going to be ongoing. We're always finding out new things, but I don't think that's a reason to throw our hands up. I think we need to, pay attention to the information that's out there and really be mindful of it.
I am interested in the prebiotics, and I'm also interested, and I had this conversation again, like I said, I had this like PhD person who works at this company come on and tell me the differences basically between like what you're looking at on the shelf, because like any other supplement, you look at the back of it. Okay, what goes to what, right? What helps what? Which one do I need? There's no way that I need the same thing that you need, that Bob needs, that Cindy needs. What am I best using? Are there some that are live and some that are not necessarily live? Are there some that shouldn't be stored on the shelf? Should I get them directly into cold? I think there is maybe that's why I'm sort of frustrated, because there really is so much information. And it's like, why do I have to look this up? Why do I have to do this? Like, shouldn't we have somebody who is already like the ultimate expert? And I almost wish it was condensed. Yeah, no, but I wish it was condensed down more, meaning like there weren't that many options. And I get that that's just not how health works, but there are so many options and there's so much bullshit in the supplement market. I wish it was regulated more. I'm not somebody who's usually for regulation, but I wish it was almost put as a medicine, and that there wasn't this sort of go into Walmart and buy it and hope for the best.
Yeah, I totally agree. For a lot of people, it's basically just like throwing spaghetti at a wall, right? They're like, I don't know, I'm going to take this probiotic. It has 10 strains, but there's a lot of evidence about specific strains for if you have like candida, like a fungal infection, if you have, or women who get yeast infections, there are specific strains that can treat respiratory illnesses. So there's a lot of evidence behind it, but you need to work with a professional that has done that research and really understands it. So, when I work with my clients, I don't just prescribe them a general probiotic. We talk about their symptoms, and then I say, this is the probiotic you need because it has these strains. So the information is out there. I think you need to work with the right people to get the information you're looking for.
I wonder if it's going to be more of a study put into like gastro doctors. If you're like a gastroenterologist, I know one or two. I've never really talked to them about this. I don't really talk to them anymore anyway. I live in a different city, but I don't really recall them ever talking much about this or having this much, information about this in their practices. I wonder if it starts to evolve more into this. My conspiracy side tells me it won't, because right now there's no money in it. Because if you can get it over the OTC and there's no money for big pharma and there's no money for the hospitals, it's going to be less talked about, less prescribed, less looked into, just like, let's say, your over-the-counter vitamins are, because of the fact that there can't be some sort of upcharge where someone's cleaving off of, a piece of the profit.
Yeah, I think you're right that generally speaking, a gastroenterologist wouldn't know, because they're not taught this in school, right? It's relatively new information, so they have to be, doing some of this additional work on their own. And you made a great point saying if there's no money behind it, what's the incentive? But there are doctors out there who are great doctors who want to make their patients healthy and have done this work, right? And have maybe a fellowship or a certification in functional medicine and really understand how different probiotics help different ailments. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I want to go back to something. I know we said we weren't going to talk politics here, but just talking about health and how we all want to be healthy. I think something that gets missed, and this is a political theory I briefly talked about with you, I think, just off camera, that a lot of people do not subscribe to. Political theorists think this is bunk, but it's called the horseshoe theory, where if the people in the center are at the top of the horseshoe and the horseshoe comes down, at the bottom of the horseshoe, there's actually more crossover between people, right? If you consider yourself far left or far right, whatever. So you can be a granola mom who lives, in a tiny house in the woods and won't vaccinate her kids and only eats organic food. And you could be somebody who is maybe a surgeon's wife, and you're conservative, and you go to church and you teach CCD, and you're, more considered conservative right wing, and you go to these expensive Pilates classes, but you also care about your body and health, and you're eating the organic foods, right? There's a crossover in those two people as far as health and fitness are concerned. And I think really what that's doing is it's spreading up the horseshoe now too, because what those sides don't have a lot in common sort of politically, but they do in health. And I think health is now just spreading up that horseshoe even to the center. And now everybody is caring a little bit more about health. And I think that's only a good thing. And there's going to be space for a lot of specialists. And the reason I'm saying this is because you were just talking about how gastroenterologists probably aren't taught a lot about this. The landscape is opening up where we're not just going to physicians for our information, and that we obviously do your due diligence, but I do think in 10 years' time, it's not just going to be about credentials. It's going to be about proof. Have you helped people? Do you have those reviews? Do you have the data to support that you help people? And the landscape is going to grow, and you're going to go to different people for various things. And it's going to actually help doctors, because they won't have what we just talked about before. They won't have all the pressures of having to do everything for the patient in 15 or 20 minutes, because they can send them to so many other various specialists that were non-existent 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't know if you hear this from your wife, Kayla, but there are a lot of doctors out there that will openly tell you, I didn't learn this in med school, right? So one of the practitioners that I follow, Mark Hyman, he's famous doctor, podcast author. That's one of the first things he says at his podcast, right? When he's interviewing these people that aren't even doctors, or maybe have different specialties, he's like, we didn't learn this in medical school. This is all new. And so I think if we can, as everyone who's a practitioner, if we can say hey, there's more out there to learn, right? If we can be humble and say, there's different ways that we can help people. It doesn't just have to be this old-fashioned way, and really open up our minds to more alternative ways. I think it's only going to benefit everyone.
Sit, fit, and chair yoga. I saw somebody write about it recently. I think maybe it was on my National Academy of Sports Medicine forum. They asked a question about it. It's something that I've taught years ago. I haven't taught it in 6 or 7 years, but I used to teach it on a weekly basis. And if anyone's not familiar with it, essentially it's for older people. So if you have an older population, let's say 65 and older, or maybe just an injured population, it is very helpful to do these classes where they're sitting down, because maybe they can't stand for the entire time. So maybe they're just sitting down for half the class or the full class if they're much older, and they're going through exercises. So maybe they have 1 or 2 pound dumbbells in their hand, and while they're sitting down, they're doing bicep curls, and they maybe give them a bender ball, Pilates ball, and they're squeezing it between their knees, working their adductors. You make it fun, and you do different exercises. I used to have like a beach ball I would bring out, and they would hit the beach ball in the air, right? Working on their shoulders and their motor coordination and stuff. So why I bring this up is because there's a lot of professionals now who struggle just to make enough money to stay in it. I've talked about this before. I can't really speak to your end in the nutrition end, but in personal training, something like over 75% of personal trainers after 2 years stop personal training or don't do it full time ever, or they never make it to full time, or they go full time and then they have no choice but to back up because they don't have enough clients. So they just have to do it as a side gig. And part of the reason is because they're just not creative enough. And you have to be willing to work with different populations. And the population that I talk about often that has money is the older population, right? These boomers who are retiring have the money. They want to spend the money. I know you could speak to this too, because you started working with this population recently. They're great to work with because you learn so much from them too, right? There is a sense of wisdom that a lot of these people have, especially people who have been around the block. They're passing wisdom on to you. They're happy to be there. They keep each other responsible. So if there's a group of them, Cindy, you didn't make class on Tuesday. Why is that? Oh, I was donating at the local church or whatever. But otherwise, they make sure that they as a group keep each other healthy and responsible and happy. And then also, I think, forget about it from a financial side or helping them side. From learning more about the body, nothing will challenge you more, but in a good way, in a fun way, than working with someone who has a lot of issues, because you have to get creative. So if someone comes up to me and they say, I can't really walk, and I have a knee issue, I have a knee replacement, and I had an infection, I can't walk, and I can't lift this shoulder because I had a surgery here and my back's been hurting. You have to start to get creative during those exercises, which is going to make you more confident down the road. And I'm sure as a nutrition professional, it's the same thing. They're coming to you with more health history issues. So then you have to look up those medications. You have to do more work. Yeah, okay, more work on the front end, but you learn so much more. And there's more positives than negatives, I'll say, about working with that population. And chair yoga and sit fit and classes like these are great to start up. They're great for your wallet and they're great for your brain.
I love that. Yeah. So basically over the last year, I have primarily worked with clients that are 55 and older, and I love it. I won't go back. I agree with everything that you said. And, as far as being in business as a trainer or as a dietitian, this population has money, right? That they're willing to spend. They're focused on their health because now maybe they're retired and they've gotten the blood work results back from their doctor, right? They're not metabolically healthy and they have the time to put in the work. So it's been, really a joy for me to work with that population. I love the idea of having the sit, fit, and chair yoga in your pocket as a trainer. I think it's like an excellent weapon to have in your arsenal. What I will say though is, you need to make sure you're using it with the right population, because, I remember when I used to work in an office, they had a trainer come in and they were like, here's what you can do while you're sitting behind your desk for 8 hours a day. No, we shouldn't be convincing 20 and 30-year-olds to sit in their chair more often, right? And get to work. Go take a walk. Go take a proper lunch break. I think I see, I guess, people outside of trainers, like, when it comes to corporate wellness, I see them misusing the chair yoga, or people who, maybe are just getting starting on their fitness journey. They want to start with that. People who aren't old and don't have an injury should not be starting with that, right? Like, I don't want people to think that sit, fit, or chair yoga is actually super beneficial when you do have the ability to work out at a higher level.
I couldn't agree more. I think if you're doing that in the office because you don't know what else to do for corporate wellness and you want to make things cool, you really missed the boat somewhere, right? You should be taking those. First of all, those people want to get out of the fucking office. You need to be taking them to the local park and doing some boot camp kind of stuff, right? If you're doing this corporate wellness stuff, not showing them how they could stretch on their chair, how they can sit on a yoga ball. Some of the corporate wellness stuff, people really missed the importance of it and why you do that. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
but yes,
for sure.
I'm talking about populations who are 75, 85. I've had people in their 90s who just can't do much else. and they're relegated, unfortunately, to the chair. People who have movement disorders, right? So I used to run a class. I have specialties for movement disorders, Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, things of this nature. So we used to do some boxing, and then we would do half the class sitting down. Right? They would stand up. Sometimes they would have their helpers that they brought to the class help them stand up, and they put on gloves and move their arms, and they hit some pads and we'd go through some boxing stuff, and then we'd sit down and do the rest of the class that way. So yes, I agree completely. This is for a population who just getting out the door is a win for them on those days. It shouldn't be sort of a regression of your physical abilities.
For sure. Agreed.
All right, so now I'm going to read off something that I came across. I have to reread it myself. I know that you don't even know what this is, so I'm interested to get your take on the fly here. It's always fun to just hear about something and see what you think. So this is called fluffy popcorn. It went viral on TikTok, and obviously everything that goes viral on TikTok is genius, and you should do it. And I guess maybe some people started getting sick, and then some health officials started cautioning people to not do this. So I'm going to read the article here, or at least part of it. Dubbed fluffy popcorn, this trend involves melting butter and marshmallows, then mixing in popcorn, sprinkles, and raw cake mix for a sweet, gooey treat. Okay, now let's move to the next part. I don't know, got like 48 million views or something. Dr. Gonzalez, a chief scientific officer for a global safety consultancy agency, said consuming raw flour can make you sick. There's bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli that cause food poisoning and contain the grains from which the flour is directly made. He's like, while flour may not look like a raw food, it is, and you shouldn't be doing this. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, so first I want to talk about it just from a health and nutrition perspective. I can't imagine how many grams of sugar are in fluffy popcorn. You said sprinkles, marshmallows.
Butter, marshmallows, popcorn, sprinkles, raw cake mix, mixed in a pot.
Batter. Yeah, no, I do not recommend, just from a fasting glucose A1C perspective. Popcorn can be a healthy food. Why do we have to tarnish it like that? Popcorn, you can have popcorn with butter. That's great, but we do not need to be putting all of these additives on it. As far as the health safety goes, I think they're talking about boxed cake mix, so you're not even referring to eggs. I think the risk is probably very low, but the risk is there. So it's something to keep in mind. There's definitely a higher risk when you're talking about raw eggs. That being said, there are dishes where they serve raw eggs. There are drinks. You go out to a bar and they want to make it frothy. They'll add a raw egg to a cocktail. I don't know if you've seen that. So it depends on how risk averse you are. My concern with the fluffy popcorn is less about the raw flour and more about it being filled with chemicals and sugar and just being terrible for your metabolism.
Well, I'm deathly afraid of E. coli under any circumstances, so I will avoid any uptick, any higher chance ability that I can obtain E. coli. I'm going to avoid it at all costs. Even if the percentages are low, I'm going to play the percentages in my favor. So I will not be doing fluffy popcorn. I don't like popcorn or cake batter or sprinkles, so I think I'm in the clear here.
You don't like popcorn? That's news. I didn't know that. What do you mean?
I don't hate it. But I feel like popcorn is a craving food. You have these people, whether it's nostalgic in like movie theaters, so they sit down to watch a movie and that's what they used to have or something, and they have this craving for it. I've never once in my life craved popcorn. If it's been around and it's cooked, someone else made it. It's not as if I won't reach my hand in, but it's not, I don't consider it one of the foods in which it just pops into my head and I say, I have to have this right now kind of deal. And that's how I categorize snacks that I like. Like, do I get that craving where I go, even if I have to run to the store at 8:30 p.m., I'm like, this snack needs to be in my house. Popcorn would never make that list.
Okay, well, I will say this. Popcorn has come a long way. So if you haven't had it recently, you can get an air popper on Amazon. They're cheap. They're under $30. So you don't need any oil. You get the organic kernels. You pop it yourself so it's warm. Again, no oils. It just pops up naturally. And then you can add whatever you'd like to it. So it can be healthy. And I think when you do it that way and you eat it warm and it's fresh, it actually is really delicious. So if you are looking for a new snack, something to try out.
Here's the part of the podcast where we complain about something to do with toddlers or daycare. My daycare sends home like a paper, and they're like, we're gonna fundraise. I said, okay, great. And to me, a fundraise means you're asking me for money, right? So like you're fundraising. Somebody goes, hey, I'm going to run wherever. I'm going to run 10 miles, running some marathon fundraiser. Give me some money, right? Whatever it is. No, the fundraiser was what I call like a second level fundraiser, which pushes me to be the fundraiser. So instead, they hand me a sheet and they go, yeah, we need you to sell this popcorn. I'm like, well, then you're not fundraising. Then I'm fundraising. What do you mean you need me to sell this popcorn? I'm like, on behalf of my 3-year-old, my 3-year-old can't sell the popcorn. That means you want me to sell the popcorn. So I look at the list. The popcorn's like $20 a bag. They're like, we were hoping
absolutely insane.
We're hoping for 8 minimum. I'm like, you want me to like what, call my relatives and I'm going to mail them the popcorn? I don't even like, how is this going to work? I just going to ring my neighbor's doorbell and be like, hey, would you like to buy a $20 bag of popcorn? Like, is it for you? I'm like, no, it's not for me. Like, is it for your daughter? Not really. Who's it for? It's for my daughter's daycare. It's a 3rd level fundraising project here. It's like,
Oh my gosh. Wait, what? I have to ask, what is the fundraising for? Are they trying to do something? Did they tell you?
They didn't tell me. I don't get it. Their name's not even on the sheet, right? It's like the third party that they use, scam. I'm like, what is going on here? If you need money, just ask me for money. I'll write you $100 check, whatever it is you need. But I'm not going to go sell popcorn on behalf of your business. Like, I own a business. Would I ask you to do a fundraiser for my business? That doesn't make sense. So
no, it's wild. And I think it's super old school. I think the only thing that has carried over from the time when we grew up is Girl Scout cookies. People want to buy Girl Scout cookies. I don't think people want to buy anything else. They don't want to buy wrapping paper. They don't want to buy magazines. They don't want to buy popcorn. You know, we have Amazon.
I agree. Need that. But I want to buy Girl Scout cookies. I don't want to sell Girl Scout cookies. There's a big difference, right? So the popcorn, they were making me sell that popcorn. That's the part that I don't quite get, but to each their own. So let's move on to the most drastic diet experience. This is where you're going to have to lead the way here. I do want to talk about this from my perspective, but whether it's yourself, you tried something, a client, something you read about, something you heard from a fellow client, what is the most drastic diet experience that you know what happened afterwards? Maybe it worked and you weren't expecting it to. Maybe it had really dire results.
Okay, can I give you 2 examples?
Sure.
And I'm going to use myself. So I do not recommend drastic diets to my clients, no matter what they come to me with, because they don't work long-term, right? And my goal with my clients is to achieve long-term results and long-term health. But, I'm sure even with yourself, you're willing to try some new things. You're willing to get more experimental because it's on you. So this is a funny story, after coming home from my honeymoon, and this is 8 years ago, we did 2 weeks in Italy. So it was 2 weeks of bread and pasta and pizza and wine. And we had a really great time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to come home. I need to do an organic juice fast. Organic, juices and smoothies. So went to Whole Foods, bought all the things, and started with like 3 really, really high fiber smoothies the first day. And I was in so much pain. Your gut cannot handle that. So, people think, well, if it's healthy, it's healthy. No, you have to look at what's going on, right? Like, health doesn't exist in a vacuum. My gut bacteria had changed in the 2 weeks that I was in Italy because it was being fed all carbohydrates, right? All bread and pastas. And so then when you go to introduce a wildly different diet, even if it is healthy, right? Even if it's filled with nutrients, your gut can't handle it. When you're going to increase fiber like that, it has to be done slowly in a stepwise fashion. But I was like, I can handle it. No big deal. So I jumped in and I was in a lot of pain. So that's something I don't recommend. Something I do recommend that I do probably once a quarter is I will do a soup fast. So there's when people talk about intermittent fasting, they typically think time restricted fasting, but there's different types of intermittent fasting. You can, eat regularly for 5 days a week and then fast for 2 days a week. You can do every other day. And so I've done every other day. And on the days that you're fasting, you want to have below 500 calories. And so I do that by having soup. So skip breakfast, just a coffee in the morning, which is normal for me. I'll have a broth soup. You want to avoid creamy soups because they're higher in calories. So a broth-based soup for lunch, usually something with protein, and then something a little bit later, like a vegetable soup for dinner. and then some herbal tea at night. And what this does is it allows your body to focus on cellular autophagy, right? So cleaning out the debris. You're not spending energy digesting. It also is turning on some of these longevity pathways in your body, activating sirtuins. It's not easy to do, but I did feel great after that week. So I did it every other day. I did it basically Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then, ate smart on Tuesday and Thursday. But, I think another thing to keep in mind is some people think, well, if you're fasting, maybe all you're thinking about is food. But once you've done it, once you've had one under your belt, it can actually help you focus, right? Because if you're thinking about how our brains are developed, right? Think about a lion like out in the Serengeti. If it is hungry, it is super focused because all it can, it's looking around, it's checking its environment for an antelope because it wants to eat. So sometimes having less calories can actually make you more focused too. So it doesn't just have physiological benefits, but it can also have mental benefits to do that type of fasting. So again, that's not something that I typically recommend to clients. It's only to very specific clients. It should be done under professional supervision. But for me, the soup fast is really remarkable.
Well, just to touch on something you just said at the end of that, I think the focus part of it goes untalked about, but it needs to work in also the reverse order. And I'll unpack that. Meaning, I think the worst time to fast, and unfortunately people do this, is sitting around at home on a Sunday. That's not when you want to fast because you have access to food in your home. Your brain doesn't really have much to focus on. So you're kind of, thinking about food on a normal time. My favorite time to fast is when I golf. Because I know I'm going to be out for 5 hours and I'm so focused on the shot and it's nice weather and you're having conversation and you're talking to people. So if I can get through the first 2 hours in the morning, let's say I wake up at 6 and then I go golf at 8 and I'm out from 8 to 1 and I'm not home till like 1:30 or something, right? It's like at that point, I'm already halfway through the day. I'm not even thinking. I come home, I shower. Before you know it, it's 3 o'clock, right? So now I just have to get through the next 3 or 4 hours if I'm trying to fast a full, 24, 36 hours. So maybe for somebody else, it's doing work. That's not that important. If it's your first time, you don't want to necessarily try to have to do something that's really important. If you have a deadline and you're a journalist, I wouldn't say the first time you should fast is on your deadline, but maybe someone who likes to play video games. You want to sit down and play video games for 5 hours. That's a good time to do it. Both your hands are on the controller. You're going to be playing video games all day. So now you don't even have access to the food. You're not thinking about it. You're focused on the video games. That's just something that popped in mind. But I do think how you fast in the space in which you fast in mentally, yes, it helps you get more focused, but you should do it when you're doing things where you're more focused, or else you will have that lapse.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure the majority of people have had days where it's so busy. You're like, oh, I forgot to eat today, right? And it can be that easy. So when I do it, I never do it over the weekend because that's when you have time and you're in your house and you're relaxing. I do it during the week when I have a lot going on, and then, you're not really thinking about it.
Yeah. In high school, I had a really wild weight up and down. I was taking supplements that you could only get on the black market sometimes.
Horse steroids. Yeah,
they're like, for animal use only. It's like, 10 milligrams, animal use only. Well, I'll take 20. We'll see what happens. I do not recommend. And that's why I'm glad that I think George Bush had the original ban on basically like all of what were considered almost legal steroids. The stuff Mark McGuire was taking, you could just get a GNC if you were over 18, and everyone knew someone who was over 18. Yeah. So this was like, the supplements names were like 1AD and 4AD. And this was the Andro, what you know as Andro poppers. You could, up until 2004, you could get Andro, which was, they circumvented the law by just changing a molecule, right? So the laws were based so much on science, Beck, not based on like what the thing did. It's like, so this is illegal. It has to have, and then they drew a picture of the molecule basically, right? So it's like, oh, well, if I just add a carb in here, it still works the
Right.
same way. And then I circumvent the law. So they found ways around that basically. And you could get literally, they were steroids, right? So how they worked in your body. And kids were taking them really young. So my body, I shouldn't have done it. I don't tell anyone to do that. It's actually terrible for you, short-term and long-term. Nonetheless, I fluctuated weight a lot in high school, but I had one point in which I took a season off from a sport. I didn't play baseball one season, either my sophomore or junior year, and just decided that I was going to exercise. I wasn't doing a lot of lifting. I was only lifting 1 or 2 days a week. I got obsessed with running. Part of the reason I got obsessed with running is, speaking of those supplements, I was taking ephedra, which was also legal back then, which is no longer illegal now. So I was popping in ephedra every day. And then me and my buddy, Red, this was just when high fat diets were coming into fad. Maybe they weren't even in fad at that point. Maybe this was just like something we had read on a forum. But I was only eating for like a 6-week period, me and one of my buddies, tuna fish, eggs, salad, carrots. That's it. This was 6 weeks. I had a lot of it. I had no restrictions on how much I could eat, but that's all I ate, right? So basically no carbohydrates outside of whatever I was getting from the carrots. And I was running maybe 3 to 5 miles average a day because I was on ephedra and because I had a lot of energy and because I was running. I got down to, I believe, 161 pounds. At one point, I was closer to 190 during the football season. So you're talking, that was within a 6-month period, I had dropped 25 pounds. And randomly, I was like in gym class and someone threw me like a ball, a basketball. And I dunked the basketball. And like, I was like, what? This is crazy because you lost so much weight that you were able to do that. No one should do that. You should not take ephedra, run 5 miles a day and only eat tuna fish and eggs. But it was terrible for my body. Certainly.
And not sustainable.
Not sustainable.
But, yeah.
That's right. But this was a 6 to 8 week period in which we did this. Again, I was losing weight anyway because I was coming off football season where you're trying to bulk up. So I'm already taking down calories and then I'm running and then I'm doing it. But I could never sustain that. Now, my life would be miserable if that was the food that I was eating every single day.
That's wild.
Yeah. Thanksgiving Day draft. I think this is the time. We're ready for it here. So we did a food draft or a vegetable draft, or what did we do? We did a fruit draft, maybe?
Fruit and beverages.
We did a fruit draft. We did a beverage draft. So we like to do our food drafts. And today is going to be a Thanksgiving food day draft. Now, I sent maybe 8 to 10 things to you that you can pick from. That's not the entirety of the list. If you think of something that's considered Thanksgiving-esque, you can go ahead and pick it. I don't know how we're going to start this. I don't know who gets first pick. You get first pick, and then I get the next 2 picks.
Should we do rock, paper, scissors?
We can do rock, paper, scissors live here on camera. One takes it. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Scissors, shoot. Bam.
You cut me.
Yeah. Okay. First pick. Without a doubt, mashed potatoes and gravy. It is not Thanksgiving without mashed potatoes and gravy. Delicious, creamy, and like not boxed mashed potatoes. Like we have to peel them. We got to mash them, add the heavy cream, add the butter. And I know people have stayed away from that for a while because they think it's so high in calorie, but you're actually better off because the fat from the butter and the heavy cream or sour cream, however you make it, is actually going to slow the absorption of the carbs of the potatoes. So go full fat mashed potatoes.
I'm not surprised you picked that. I wasn't thinking about mashed potatoes necessarily, but I didn't think you would pick what I was picking, is what I should say. And I'll tell you why after I pick it. My first pick, without a doubt, is pumpkin pie. And part of the reason why is because you are sort of a dessert freak, right? You like to bake desserts. You love desserts. You post about desserts. I don't eat desserts. Unless I go to a restaurant, we barely have desserts in the house. I don't have a sweet tooth, so to speak. My sweet tooth comes from chocolate milk here and there or something. So, or my protein bars that have some sugars in them and that have like sort of a chocolatey flair to it. So I don't eat a lot of desserts. When I think about dessert, I think about pumpkin pie. It's my favorite dessert and I don't know how to make it or I don't have the energy to make it. And typically when you buy pumpkin pies, they're gross. So you get homemade pumpkin pies on Thanksgiving, and that's my number 1 pick.
I love homemade pumpkin pie. I actually just wrote an article about some of the health benefits of pumpkin spice. the spice that goes into pumpkin pie. So it's cinnamon and nutmeg and ginger and allspice. And there are so many antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits. So I think for this time of year, pumpkin pie maybe could be classified as a healthy food, depending on how much sugar is in there. Okay, my second one is pretty old school. I don't think anyone in our family liked it. I know my husband doesn't like it, so sometimes I just make it for myself. Green bean casserole. I don't like green beans any other time of the year. As far as a green vegetable goes, they're a little bit more starchy. But I love green bean casserole with the mushroom soup and then the crunchy onions on top. And you can do it in a healthy way, right? That you don't have to use the Campbell's mushroom. They have like organic mushrooms, and they have some healthier versions of those crunchy onions too.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't like anything mushroom. So I've had green bean casserole. I know it sounds like, okay, maybe this is not green bean casserole the way I'm going to say it, but it was substituted out for something that had the same consistency as the mushroom, whatever, but it just wasn't mushrooms, and it was very good, but I don't do mushrooms. But going on to pick 4 here, I guess I have no choice but to go with turkey. I know it's very bland and boring, but what is Thanksgiving without turkey? And I don't know why else you would use gravy or even have gravy, considering if you're really making gravy, you need to cook the turkey in order to make the gravy in the first place. And I love gravy so much that I feel like you have to pair the two together. So turkey and gravy, number 4.
Do with the turkey. Okay. My next choice is not going to be popular. I think Thanksgiving is such a heavy meal, right? You have the turkey, you have the potatoes, you have just everything is so heavy. I think you need like a palate cleanser. I think you need something lighter and fresher on your plate. So I think some type of fall salad, right? Whether it's like beets and goat cheese and arugula, or, pears and walnuts with spinach. I think you need something lighter, because that food is so heavy, you don't want to walk away from the table feeling like crap.
I like that. Yeah, I do. I forget what it was exactly, but it was something as you were describing. Maybe it was chopped up Granny Smith apples with craisins or cranberries, and a little bit of sort of salad, but it had more of a fall flavory feel to it that I've had before on Thanksgiving dinners, whether it was when we were younger or sometime after that I do remember being good, like you said. So it's not just all heavy starches in your stomach and having to sit down on the couch for 3 hours not being able to move. I guess I'll go with cranberry sauce next. Maybe you can throw cranberry wine in there, just some sort of cranberry flavor.
Talking about like the canned cranberry?
It doesn't matter, some form of cranberry. So I know that's maybe not picking something specifically, but yes, a cranberry. I don't typically like the reduction cranberry sauces that have like chunks of cranberry in them. I don't hate them, but I prefer the old school cranberry sauce in a can. I like that texture. You only have it one time of year. But I also like cranberry wine. My wife's family does cranberry wine as one of their Thanksgiving treats. So sometimes instead of having the cranberry flavor from the canned cranberry, we'll just have a glass of cranberry wine, but still sort of gives my palate the sense of Thanksgiving cranberry flavor that it needs.
It's actually like real wine where they just use cranberries instead of grapes, or is it just wine like with cranberry flavoring?
I have no idea. So it's a great question. It's a great question. My assumption was that, my assumption is that they made it from cranberries, but I'm not positive. But it doesn't taste fake at all, and it tastes just like cranberries. And it's easy to drink. It's more like a Moscato. It's a little sweet, but it pairs well with the Thanksgiving Day food.
It's fun for fall. I like that. Do we have one more? One more pick each?
We have one more each.
All right, well, on the beverage, if we're on the beverage train, I love apple cider. So it's not the same in Miami, because it's still 70 degrees at Thanksgiving, but, not apple juice, right? Apple juice, I'm not interested in, but apple cider with the spices and the flavors, even like warmed apple cider, you can make it into a cocktail if you wanted to. I love apple cider.
What's really interesting? when you think Thanksgiving in my head, when I close my eyes, you see colors. And why you see colors, I always thought was because of the leaves that are changing and it's fall. But also all of the Thanksgiving Day foods happen to fall into that color palette, right? So it's like, so my next pick was going to be like yams with the marshmallows on top of them, right? That everyone make on Thanksgiving. I don't know if that's called something in particular, but I don't eat yams. I eat sweet potatoes. I know there's a little bit of a difference between the two, maybe where they're grown or something, but I don't eat traditional yams. I eat sweet potatoes, and I certainly don't and have marshmallows and syrup and all this other stuff on them. So it's good to have like a sweetened version of them. But yeah, as I started thinking of it, you have the cranberry coloration, right? You have we just talked about the yams. You have the pumpkin pie. Outside of like
the gravy,
the browns and the gravy. So all the food choices too mirror kind of what the Thanksgiving theme is on the outside, like autumn. I guess you would call it like an autumn color palette.
That's really interesting. I bet that applies to the other holidays as well, right? Like you think of Easter as like brighter foods and like a lot of red foods, cherry pie, apple pie at Christmas.
Yeah. Easter, a lot of people eat ham that has sort of like a light pink, right?
Yeah.
Wherein that's what Easter has, like a pink and yellow and light blue and kind of like a pastel.
Veggies, yeah.
You have the veggies, and then Christmas is a little bit more darker tones. So when people think Christmas, it's got like, whatever, dark greens and dark reds and dark blues. And like you're eating like maybe people eating filet mignon or steak or something darker. And they're eating like, so it is interesting how the food matches the holidays. Maybe there's something going on there. Some subliminal messaging from big food getting to us for our holidays. Thanks for joining in, Beck, and let everyone know where they can find you and everything about you. And if they want to reach out to you personally, professionally, how they would do that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So you can find me on Instagram at The Happy Healthy Nutritionist, or check out my website, happyhealthynutritionist.com.
And remember, our Monday episodes are released also on YouTube. So if you're listening to this right now, you could be watching it. The Thursday episodes are typically not. They are just solo episodes that I only release audio. This has been an episode of the TrulyFit Podcast. Beck, thanks for joining in.